if you're planning a dream vacation, maybe something centered around diving, there's a good chance Yonaguni Island is on your list.
Oh, absolutely. It's Japan's westernmost point. We're talking just stunning turquoise waters, these mysterious underwater ruins.
And the hammerhead sharks, right? The massive schools of them.
Exactly. It's really the definition of a remote tropical paradise.
And that very isolation is what makes this story, frankly, so unsettling.
It really is. That tiny island, just 28 square kilometers, has been completely transformed. A place that, maybe a decade ago only divers knew about,
Right.
is now, and this isn't an exaggeration, arguably the most volatile military flashpoint in all of Asia. It's become the eye of the storm.
That is a staggering transformation.
Yeah.
And we've been going through the sources on this, and our mission today is to really unpack how this happened. The geography, the strategy, the tech.
All of it. All the things that explain why this one tiny island is suddenly at the center of a global confrontation that involves not just Beijing, but Moscow, too.
So where do we start? I feel like you have to start with the map.
You have to. It all comes down to the paradox of its location. And really, it comes down to one single critical number, 110 kilometers.
And that's the distance from Yonaguni to the east coast of Taiwan.
Exactly. And you have to let that sink in. This is Japanese soil, but it's so much closer to Taiwan than it is to, Tokyo or any major Japanese city.
The sources even say that on a clear day, you can actually see Taiwan's mountains from the island.
You can. With the naked eye, no binoculars needed. And this proximity, it just collapses the timeline for any potential conflict.
I mean, a ferry could get you there in what, under an hour?
Less than an hour. And for a modern jet fighter, we're talking less than 5 minutes. So this spot, this piece of Japanese territory that's basically breathing the same air as Taiwan, has become the most dangerous piece of real estate in Asia.
Which brings us to this idea of the bolt on the door. China made a very conscious decision to weaponize this geography.
They did. They shattered the peace of the island, really. The sources describe this incredibly stark visual change.
The tourist buses are gone.
Gone. Replaced with olive green military trucks. And where you used to have observation decks for, dolphin watching.
Now you have massive surveillance radar.
Exactly. And this is all despite Japan's pacifist constitution. Tokyo fast-tracked the deployment of air defense missile systems, electronic warfare units, right onto Taiwan's doorstep.
Now, Tokyo is very careful to frame this as defense, purely defense.
Of course.
But the minute you put advanced missile launchers that close to a global flashpoint, you're sending a message. So, what is the actual military function here? Why are a few launchers on a tiny island so terrifying to a superpower like China?
To get that, you have to look just a little bit east of Yonaguni. The real target here isn't Taiwan itself, it's the Miyako Strait.
Okay, the gap between Okinawa and Miyako Island. Why is that one strait so critical?
It is, and this is no exaggeration, China's lifeline to the open ocean. The waters right off the Chinese coast are very shallow. They're part of the continental shelf.
Not good for big ships.
Awful for them, especially for deep draft vessels like aircraft carriers or, more importantly, nuclear submarines. They can't operate effectively. They can't hide. To be a true blue water navy, they have to get into the deep Pacific.
And the Miyako Strait is one of the only deep, wide gateways for them to do that. It's the main door.
It is the door. And if the Miyako Strait is the door, then Yonaguni, sitting just off to the side, becomes the strategic bolt on that door. By putting missiles there, Japan isn't just defending an island, it's trying to lock down that entire passage.
This sounds exactly like the anti-accessoria denial strategy A2AD that we hear so much about.
That's precisely what it is. But it's about how it works. Right. It's not just one missile. Yonaguni becomes this unsinkable floating fortress, part of a much larger multi-layered net.
A deadly net, as some of the sources call it.
Yes. They've deployed long-range surface-to-ship missiles, surface-to-air missiles. It creates these overlapping kill zones.
So in practical terms, what can that net do?
The radar on Yonaguni can give you real-time, high-definition targeting data on anything moving through the strait. A Chinese carrier, a submarine, a squadron of jets, and the missiles using that data can hit ships, control the airspace, break up an enemy formation before it ever even gets out into the Pacific.
So you're basically threatening to cripple their entire naval strategy. It's an existential threat to their ability to project power.
It is. It essentially puts a cap on their global ambitions. And from Beijing's point of view, that's not defense. That is an intolerable act of aggression.
Which makes perfect sense.
Right.
But this plan, this very aggressive strategy, it wasn't cooked up in isolation in Tokyo, was it?
Not a chance. This takes us to the grand strategy and to the master architect behind it all.
The United States.
Of course. It would be naive to think Japan is doing this on its own. They are a critical piece in a U.S. strategy that's been in place for over half a century. We're talking about the first island chain.
Can you lay that out for us? It's a term people hear, but it's so fundamental to the region.
Okay, so picture the coastline of mainland Asia. The first island chain is like a long wall running along it. It starts with Japan up in the north,
Right.
runs down through the Ryukyu Islands, which is where Yonaguni is. Then it connects right through Taiwan and goes all the way down to the Philippines.
The Great Wall on the Sea.
A perfect description. And for the U.S., the goal has always been containment, to keep its main rivals, now China, from being able to operate freely in the Pacific. But that wall has always had a few gaps.
And Yonaguni was a big one, a loose link.
The loosest link, right next to the most sensitive area, Taiwan. So militarizing it is like the U.S. driving the final spike into that steel door. It seals the gap. So when Beijing or Moscow looks at that missile battery, they don't just see a Japanese flag.
They see the Pentagon.
They see the shadow of the Pentagon looming right behind it.
Which really highlights this new era of the U.S.-Japan alliance. It's not just about Japan providing a location, is it? What's the division of labor?
It's deep, deep integration. Japan provides the territory, the personnel on the ground, but the strategy, the intelligence, the global network, that's American. The radar systems on Yonaguni feed directly into the U.S. command and control network.
So any data on Chinese movements is instantly in American hands. Japan becomes this irreplaceable forward outpost.
Absolutely. And that's why this is causing such a global reaction. The pressure is building, and not just from China. This brings us to a really fascinating, and for Japan, terrifying development. The two-front nightmare.
The roar from the north,
Hmm.
from Russia, which at first seems strange. Why would Russia, thousands of miles away, care so intensely about a few missiles on a tropical island?
Because the Kremlin doesn't see this as a local issue. They see it as part of one single grand U.S. strategy to encircle the entire Eurasian landmass. From their perspective, fortifying the first island chain is a kill two birds with one stone move. Well, it obviously contains China, but it also throttles Russia's own Pacific fleet, which is based out of Vladivostok. Closing the Miyako Strait is like pointing a gun at their back door, locking them down in the Pacific, just as NATO is trying to lock them down in Europe.
So that shared sense of encirclement, of an existential threat, is what's pushing Moscow and Beijing into that back-to-back strategic posture we're seeing.
Exactly. These are not natural allies, historically. But this pressure from the U.S. and its allies is forcing them together. And it explains Russia's response. They didn't issue some polite diplomatic protest.
No, it's a cold threat, adequate reciprocal measures.
And Russia's responding with its own brutal logic, while Japan is pouring all its attention and resources south.
Russia is turning up the heat in the north.
That's the pincer movement. As Japan builds up Yonaguni, Russia is escalating its own military presence in the Kuril Islands, what Japan calls the Northern Territories.
And what are they putting there? Similar systems.
The exact same playbook. Anti-ship missile systems, new air defense installations, the same kind of A2AD bubble. The message from Moscow couldn't be clearer. If you help block our partner's southern door, we will smash your northern door.
That has to be a chilling realization for Tokyo. They thought they were solving one problem, China, and instead they've walked into the ultimate strategic nightmare.
A war on two fronts. Caught in a giant vice, it completely upends their entire defense posture.
So let's shift from the grand strategy to the immediate danger on the ground. This brings us to the edge of miscalculation.
Right.
We all know Taiwan is a core interest for Beijing. It's not negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
How does Yonaguni specifically raise the risk of conflict?
Because from China's perspective, putting those systems there is not defense. It's open preparation for war. They see advanced missiles and radar right next to Taiwan, and they don't see a shield. They see a spear.
And the military capabilities back that up. Missiles on Yonaguni could, theoretically, shoot down Chinese planes in Taiwanese airspace.
Or the radar could be used to guide American munitions. It basically turns the island into a forward base for a war over Taiwan. And Beijing has been crystal clear that crosses a red line. They've explicitly warned that Japan is playing with fire and turning itself into a legitimate target for a preemptive strike.
This is that deadly spiral where strategic trust just completely collapses.
It's gone. Every move you make for your own defense is seen by your opponent as an offensive threat, and the margin for error just vanishes.
And great wars so often start that way, don't they? Not with a grand plan, but with a mistake. A miscalculation in a crowded space.
And that space is getting incredibly crowded. The airspace and seas around Yonaguni are dense. You have U.S. spy planes, Chinese fighters buzzing them, Japanese destroyers, sometimes Russian warships passing through.
All in the same tiny patch of ocean?
All circling each other. All it takes is one pilot who's too aggressive, one radar glitch, one misinterpretation, and the whole thing could ignite.
And this instability is spreading, right? It's not contained to just the island. It's having a ripple effect.
A massive one. It's a butterfly effect. Yonaguni is the first domino. Its militarization is setting off a frantic arms race across Asia.
So what are we seeing?
South Korea is speeding up its naval programs. The Philippines is opening more bases to the U.S. because they feel the pressure from China. And Taiwan, of course, is buying as many weapons as it can.
It's a cruel, self-fulfilling prophecy. All these moves made in the name of security are just making the entire region more dangerous.
That's the paradox, isn't it? The story of Yonaguni really marks the end of an era, the end of that post-Cold War peace in Asia. Geography is destiny again, and everyone is being forced to pick a side.
So for these small, beautiful places like Yonaguni, what's the lesson?
I think it's a bitter one. That being strategically located is often a curse, not a blessing. You become a pawn, an outpost, a shield for the great powers. You're put on the front line, positioned to take the first hit.
And every single power involved, the U.S., Japan, China, Russia, they all claim they're just acting in the interest of security and justice.
Everyone says they want peace, but they're all trying to get there by sharpening their swords.
Which leaves us with this final lingering question, doesn't it? The one that seems to be whispered by the waves crashing on Yonaguni's shores now.
It does. Will turning a paradise into a steel fortress actually bring anyone safety? Or is it just a guarantee that a much, much bigger storm is on its way?